Thanks, Radhika. Awesome. It's great to see a full house today. I know it's raining, so thank you all for coming down. It's great to be here actually. So some of you know I was at Microsoft before joining Elevation. In fact, this is the office where I came for my orientation. And for a brief amount of time, I thought this is where I'm going to be working out of, and I was super happy. But then I was told that my office was going to be the Search Upper one. It's also great, but not in the best part of the city. So yeah, great to be back at Microsoft. Before I actually get into the presentation, and we have a short one just to talk about the fund, we're going to be around, so feel free to approach us and ask us any questions if you have. Any designers in the house? Anyone who's worked with design? Okay, great. So quiz question for you guys. Can you guess what our logo means? So there are two arrows next to the name. Any guesses?
Pointed towards the play.
Yeah.
Onwards and upwards.
Great. Any other guesses? Why two arrows?
One is founder and one is elevation.
Perfect. So yeah, I think this logo really captures the ethos with which we work at the fund. We are very, very proud to be extremely founder friendly. The big arrow represents the founder who do all the hard work, have a vision which they bring to reality. And the small arrow is us as a fund, where we not only help with capital, but also help being the best friend and partner in their journey. And since we're an early stage fund, some of these journeys can span 7-8 years, even longer. So we really believe in partnering with each and every founder in a big way to make their dream a success. So really quickly about the fund, we've been investing in India for more than 20 years. We were earlier called SEF Partners. Some of you might have heard that name. SEF stood for SoftBank Asia Infrastructure Fund. We started the journey with Association of SoftBank, but over the years the fund became independent. We did really well, so we retained the brand name for some time, but I think if we look to the future, we wanted to carve a separate new identity for us, and we rebranded to Elevation 3 years ago. Some quick stats about the fund: we currently have more than 2 billion in assets under management. We've seen 5 IPOs in our portfolio. I'm sure you recognize all the logos here, the household names. We were the first institutional investor in most of them. So we have a very deep history of backing founders very early on and being with them along the journey. We have 3 offices, Gurgaon, Bangalore, and Salt Lake City. Poorvi and I are based out of the Bangalore office, 40+ member team. I'll talk a little bit more about the team in the next couple of slides. So if one thing I want all of you to take away about Elevation is our 3 main values. The first one we call from day one. Like I said, we've backed founders when they've been super early in the journey. What does early mean? So if you take Acco for example, we wrote the check for them before they even had a product. It was a paper plan. We knew the founders from before they had done cover Fox. We really believed in them and their capability to execute, and we backed them with our new product. If you look at Paytm, when they started, I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember the early Paytm model. They were actually a mobile VAS business which will sell ringtones and a bunch of other value-added services. There was no fintech play at the horizon. We backed them early on. In fact, Ravi, our co-managing partner, took that bet on Vijay Shekhar very early. And till this date, whenever Vijay talks about Elevation and Ravi, he calls Ravi his co-founder, not investor, because that's how deep the partnership was. Similar story with Urban Company and Swiggy. Swiggy, for example, we backed when they were just delivering in Port Mamra, 35 orders a day. And at that point, there were a bunch of other competitors in the market, Tiny Owl, there were a few others. We really believed in Harsha Majeti and the team's capability to execute an big outcome, and we backed them at that scale. So that's the first value. It's never too early to reach out to us. We back founders who believe in from a very early stage. The second is one-on-one. This is a very important value for us. We don't do any competing investments. For us, every founder building in a particular category or space is one-of-one. When we take a bet, we back them till the very end. And this has really paid out for us, that commitment, that focus, and that partnership. All these companies, Accos, ChairChat, Spain, Broker, they're now category leaders. Even though we had an opportunity as a fund, some other funds do take multiple bets within the category because they're spreading their risk and portfolio. We don't do that. We believe in one team for that category, and we back it to the end. The third is all in. It's not just about capital, it's also about individual time and attention. But as far as the capital is concerned, if you look at Paytm's journey, since the first check we wrote, we've actually invested more than 100 million in the company through its IPO. So we backed them through the stages. Obviously, other investors came in as the company grew, but we wanted to be with the company till the very end, and that's one of the guiding philosophies for us. Even for Meesho, we backed them super early on, and we're still active partners with them, both on the capital side and otherwise. Now they have crossed 5 million entrepreneurs. We proudly believe that we have the best SaaS investment team in the market now. If you look at the range of experience that everyone comes with, we have expertise across product, engineering, design, GTM sales, and also a multifaceted experience from consulting for Mukul and Akash. I won't go into everyone's experience in detail, you can see the logos, but it's not just about the investment team. If you look at our functional expertise in terms of the portfolio services that we offer, everything that you can think that an early stage company will need to be successful at that stage, from hiring to branding and PR support to finance 101 and legal expertise, we have it all. And we also have Ganesh, who leads our corp dev, to help you raise the next set of capital as the company grows. So we believe we have the best team now to really help you win in the SaaS ecosystem. Again, you can check out our portfolio on the website in detail. I won't spend too much time. I'll hand it over to Poorvi to talk about some of our emerging thoughts on Gen AI. But really quickly, all of these companies use AI in some way or shape or manner in their business. But if you look at the AI box, Merv.ai is one company I would like to call out. We took a bet in them around more than 2 years ago in 2021. This is a generative AI company building text-to-speech AI before Gen AI became a buzzword. Nanonets is an AI-based document processing tool growing really fast. All these companies are across the 5 million ARR mark, which is a huge chasm for some of these early stage SaaS companies to cross, and we're really excited about the portfolio. Do reach out to us if you have any questions about this portfolio, but super excited about the India story, and with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Hello. Awesome. I think you'll realize that today's, the way we wanted to curate this experience was that, hey, we have someone from research, we give an investment lens, we have folks who are building and working in the industry right now. So hopefully, I think folks who are glazing so far will have something to look forward from a business and an investment perspective. I'll go forward and talk about, what we are here for today, that what is the difference that we've seen in the AI ecosystem. So if you look at the graph, obviously AI has been on the rise for the last 5-7 years. But if you see that, what generative AI has been able to capture in the last 4-5 years is huge. And this is also very interesting because, we have been AI investors for a good amount of time now with our investments in Merv, Nanonets, Plena, Zenny, and a bunch of others that you saw. But what we are seeing now is that, hey, most of these AI companies are also becoming generative AI companies. But this graph actually is a little skewed if you think about it, because at least till date, most of the funding is skewed to few companies. And that is something that we do believe is going to change in the future. But this is an interesting thought to think about that, hey, is generative AI going to capture most of the AI landscape going forward? I think this is very interesting to me because, we keep talking about that, hey, the generative AI era is like the cloud era or the iPhone movement, right? And rightly so, because this is a technology inflection point and definitely affects the way we work and live right now. But if we really go deep and try to understand what are the parallels we can draw from the cloud era and build a hypothesis on how it's going to play out and where the value is going to accrue in the generative AI, there are actually very interesting things that we can look for. So if we go to the pre-2000 eras, right, like storage was on-prem, data centers we used to heavily rely on, IBM Oracle sort of completely dominated the IT infra market. But with the emergence of the private clouds, your Azure, GCP, AWS, companies started thinking about, okay, maybe there's something in the cloud, but nobody still adopted it, right? There was a fundamental shift, people were very wary of adoption. Cost, security, how do you actually move to the cloud are all open questions. And it took almost 5-7 years for these companies to actually start moving to the cloud. And what happened in those 5-7 years was these cloud providers sort of started building that infrastructure where people could trust the security. And I think Sriram was also talking about it, that security gets built over time. Microsoft has done so much. But all these cloud providers did that, and there were also ecosystem enablers, like Palo Alto Networks, for example, came back then, Semantic came back then, right? So that happened, and then when people started moving to the cloud for a long time, that's when we saw the boom of SaaS applications. And there, very unique niche use cases started coming in, from your Salesforce, to your Netflix, to your Intercom, everything. So that, if we actually now come back to the generative AI era in the next decade, there's a very interesting parallel we can draw. We are literally right at the beginning right now. Foundational models, diffusion models are just gaining momentum right now. They're still very early. People are wary of using them. How do you use them at production? Is the security? I think somebody asked a question as well. How do you think about the security? All these are very open questions that people are thinking about. But our hypothesis, at least so far, has been that hey, the cloud, the model providers, as well as the ecosystem enablers, in the next few years are actually going to solve for it. So we do believe that with the combination of model providers as well as new companies that are going to get built are going to enable this ecosystem. And once that happens, you're again going to see a huge influx of applications that come in. And the applications in this case and this era is going to be divided between the incumbents as well as the new companies that come in, right? Because incumbents are also going to leverage the generative AI workflows and then get into them. So that is something that's very interesting and a parallel that you can think about, that hey, when people think about the cloud era, what do they really mean? Another interesting takeaway, at least for me here, is that if you look at the cloud era, most of the value accrue in the major public cloud providers, right? But now if you compare, almost the infrastructure and security and the application is almost half of it. And that is something that we again believe is going to play out. We try to draw that, we try to draw that parallel in, what is happening across the generative AI stack in the global players. And pardon us if this is not exhaustive. We have tried to be as exhaustive as possible. But right now, most of the value is still getting accrued in the foundational models because we are in that early journey. Right now, probably tools that enable the ecosystem is just 10% of it. Applications are around 20% of it. But in the next 3 to 5 years, we definitely believe this is going to change. And this is going to be 50% of what the entire ecosystem is going to accrue. Now, this could be a little provocative because we also try to see that, hey, what's happening in India? And we're extremely early, right? Obviously, foundational models, and Sriram was talking about it. Do we really need to build foundational models? I think Microsoft is doing a lot of work. Maybe there will be indic models that we will, build. We don't know. Nothing has happened so far, but we're still excited about it. The second part is the infra and the model ops, the tools that actually enable you using a model to build applications, and then a huge spectrum of applications. But if you compare it to the global world, we're still very, very early. And there is a huge spectrum for us to actually innovate here. We could be early mover advantage. There are early mover advantages to it. There are still applications we can build. There is I think the middle layer is the most exciting one for me. And I think this is up for takes completely right now. Because it is still getting built, right? Next, I think, there was something wrong there, but we try to break down the entire stack, and I think everyone knows about this stack sitting here now. But we just wanted to go deep in each one of these stacks and think about what is exciting, where are the opportunities, and where we can actually think about building companies, right? So coming down to the infrastructure layer, the layer that powers this generative AI innovation, and thinking about the wafers to begin with, I actually see two major tailwinds here at a macro level. So one is with a push towards larger models, larger context windows, there is a huge, we will need compute and compute optimized chips, right, for India market. And the other one is actually China plus one is a macro tailwind, which is going to fundamentally change the semiconductor industry, and people are in different ways and pockets are thinking about it. But yes, building a chip company is not easy. It is extremely capital intensive. It has a long time to value. You need to have intangibles like supplier relationships and all of those. But once you get in, it's extremely sticky. People don't switch out. So if there's anyone who's thinking about building a chip company, please come and talk. This is still very exciting for us. We do believe that this is a huge opportunity in this area. Coming to the cloud infra, I think it is commoditized at this point in time. I think most of the bigger cloud providers like Azure, GCP, AWS have captured this market. But if you really think about about what's happening here, there's a very interesting, and I'm pretty sure most of you are following that landscape. We're seeing that every cloud provider is also partnering with a model provider, right? So if we think about Microsoft and OpenAI, we think about Google and Anthropic, we think about Oracle and Cohere. So they're long-lasting ecosystems that are getting built, right? And that's a very interesting thing because this will have huge long-term impact, and this is something to watch out for. I think libraries is straightforward but also exciting because to use this bare infrastructure, you need libraries to build on. And the barrier to entry here is just people. You need extremely high quality researchers to start building this. And once you build this, you have a long-term play. You accrue, like you're almost setting the standards for creation and usage, right? Like what Google had done with TPU and TensorFlow. So this is very exciting again because the barrier to entry is also not capital. So this is something for all of us to think about. Coming to the model layer, I think all of us have spoken a lot about it. Foundational models are tough to build, as Sriram was talking about. But there are vertical specific models that we can think. Right? So I am personally very excited about models getting built on vertical use cases, whether it's healthcare, IoT, manufacturing, probably agriculture. So this is a space that all of us can think about, and if there is something that comes up here. But again, model making is not easy. It is extremely capital intensive. You require a lot of compute, you require resources, but still interesting. But we're still discovering whether something is getting built in India or not, right? Tooling layer. I think this is the part that I am personally most excited about, and I believe this is ripe for disruption. And the reason is because once you build this, you are almost a core part of the stack. And this, again, is changing very rapidly. So if we have thought about the modern data stack and how it has evolved, in the LLM world, that modern data stack is changing completely. We spent a lot of time as a team in the last few years understanding what modern data stack means. How do you do observability? How do you do deployment? What are databases? But that has completely changed when it comes to Gen AI, right? All of this stack is getting redefined now. So this, again, is a very interesting opportunity at this point in time to get in. Again, because until unless this gets set up, it will be very difficult for the applications to start building at scale, right? Another thing to think about here is that infrastructure, which is like, and I call tooling right now in the infrastructure, that tooling and applications always go hand in hand. It's not that you will build all the tooling in the world and then we'll start to think about applications. They will go hand in hand. The current applications demand a certain level of tooling that will get built now, and then there will be more applications that probably come in. There will be more tooling coming. They'll always come in hand, and that's an insight that we've had for a very long time. So we don't believe that, hey, we should not invest in applications right now, we should only invest in infrastructure, versus we should only invest in applications and not in infrastructure. They will always go hand in hand. So this is again a very interesting part. Another thing that's happening here is, and I think everyone knows about what happened with Databricks and MosaicML recently. So if we think about partnerships, right, Databricks and MosaicML, Snowflake and NVIDIA. So there are again ecosystems getting created where models will be trained and managed. So that is another place that we are on a lookout for, that, hey, what are the long-lasting impacts of it from a business and a commercial perspective. Now coming to the application layer, the top of the stack, and I think a lot of us have used a lot of interesting stuff here, keep thinking about it, a lot of builders we've seen in India building in this space. So when I think about the application layer, I actually think about two parts. Either we are augmenting existing workflows or we are creating net new unlocks, right? If you're augmenting existing workflows, we can think about that, hey, are we providing an aid in creating something, right? Like almost a V1 to create something, which is what a Jasper and a copy did. The second one could be that, hey, we're giving a very structured and a directed input to get something, which is what a GitHub Copilot did. The third could be that, hey, hyper-personalization on my data, that is what a Mutiny did. So these are different things where, yes, those parts were done before, but now you're augmenting it with the workflows on generative AI, and that has actually given you a 10x productivity boost. The other part is actually even more interesting, which is unlocking net new capabilities. Because this is essentially something that, if generative AI hadn't come, this wouldn't have been possible. And Sriram also touched a lot on in his conversation about it. That almost think of it that AI agents, right? Like if you give them a task, they deconstruct it into different things, and they actually solve it in an undiscovered way and a more efficient way, which was just not possible before. That's a very interesting play to me. We're seeing a lot of applications of this in gaming as well, where the dynamic playing that hey, depending on how a player is playing, you can actually completely change the game for them. And that can happen at scale. That is creating, unlocking new capabilities for me. This again is super exciting. I think in application layer, this is the part where a lot of interesting stuff will get built. But the other part to think about here is that people almost dismiss the application layer somehow these days. Right? They almost think that, hey, application layer has no mode because the underlying infrastructure is what we are dependent on. But really think about first principles and a very fundamental business principles apply in every business that you build. If you go very deep in customer understanding, you build a stellar UX product, you have the data flywheel, there is some proprietary information which is either data or customer insight that you have. There is no reason for you to not build a good company on application, right? So again, diving deep into the point that, hey, as long as you know that customer better than anyone else, you have some data flywheel that's going on for you, you build a 10x better product on US, there are interesting applications that you can build that will fly in the market. Only thing that you have to be cognizant of is that, hey, is AI at its core, or is it just a new feature that's getting added in the overall workflow, right? So that's the part that we are excited about, and we keep on meeting a lot of application companies as well, and these are the way we judge them. To marry this, we also spoke to a lot of folks in bigger enterprises across the globe and what they are doing, what are they excited about. We wanted to see that, hey, obviously we have a thesis, we are going after new companies, but what are the problems of existing companies trying to leverage generative AI workflows? I think what we realized was that, hey, marketing and commerce, essentially personalized content, getting that V1 of the first thing that you're trying to do, customer support and chatbots are low-hanging fruits. A lot of companies that we spoke to have already started thinking or deploying this in production. There are challenges. Yes, explainability is a challenge. Yes, real-time processing is computationally intensive. Yes, compliance is required, but a lot of companies are still thinking about building this into production. The part which is again exciting is that people are working on code and query optimization. There are a lot of folks who want to make, and early on, honestly speaking, I felt that code productivity would not be as big an enhancement, but it has completely changed the game. Most of the companies we have spoken to are actually very excited about code productivity and are trying a bunch of different things, but they have not been able to, and they're still in the exploration phase. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done on quality and maintenance of the AI-generated code, and how do you think about it? Then again, like secure storage, access controls, all of those things, it applies to everything, but code and productivity is something that people are still exploring. So if anyone is building in that space, I think it is ripe for disruption. Bigger enterprises are up for takes because they want this to happen, and I think there will be a lot of early adopters if you're building in this space, right? Now coming to, I think this is towards the last, that okay, what is happening? What is the TLDR of all of this? I think this is where we believe what is happening in generative AI. We feel that large foundational models will almost play out the cloud story. There will be consolidation. There will be a few cloud model providers that will essentially dominate the market. We don't know if they're going to be the current ones, if they're going to be the smaller models, but there will be consolidation. We also believe that there will be specific models that will rise, which is what I was talking about, the vertical use cases, whether it's IoT, manufacturing, healthcare, agriculture, and that is very exciting. The other part is, as a TLDR, your modern data stack is changing. Anyone who has been using modern data stack so far already realizes that hey, for LLM deployment, these software require a new infrastructure tooling, and how do you think about it? Yes, there will be incumbents who would already start thinking about it, but this area is up for takes. Like, there is so much disruption happening in this area that if you build the tools where deployment can happen well, you'll be in a great position at this point. I think the third part, which is obviously counterintuitive at times, application layer still has a moat. I will not say that application layer doesn't have a moat. It all boils down to how deeply you understand your customers, what is the product UX you're building, and how do you combine it with the network effects. And that's a beautiful application in my mind. The last part is, and this is something that we heard from a lot of enterprises, right? Evaluation of LLMs is still very, very hard. Like there are so many models, both open source and closed source, coming in the market. If I'm an enterprise who's trying to understand that, hey, which LLM do I use? How should I use it? Can I use multiple LLMs? That is still a question that people are asking. It's not solved. So if there is interoperability of LLMs, that is still an open question, and people are trying to think about it. I think the last part is just the ROI, right? Not everything requires personalization, probably. And I think the rest of the speakers will touch on that. That, hey, how do you think about the ROI of personalization and cost efficiency? What are the use cases that you think about whether you should use generative AI for that personalization or not? So I will leave it here. I will leave it here that, these are the broad topics that we have been thinking about from a thesis perspective. And just for the skeptics in the room, we don't know, right? Who's going to be the real co-pilot? Probably it will be the AI or us, we just don't know. But overall, and I'm pretty sure there are a lot of societal implications, everything else that we can talk about at length. But overall, we are very excited about where the industry is headed. We are actively talking to companies building in this space. We are actively talking to enterprises building in this space. There is a huge land grab opportunity for folks in India as well to build in different layers. And if you're building one, if you're trying to explore something in a small enterprise, in a big enterprise, come jam with us. We'll be happy to talk. You can find me or the team around. And yeah, this is it for me. Thank you.